Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku, back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Midoriya's Secret Past Was Revealed. Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Running. He was running and he couldn't stop. If he did, they would catch him and the pain and torment would return. So he was running away as far as possible. It was his only goal at that moment. He paid little attention to the scenery rushing past him, just enough to avoid any obstacles that could slow him down. He was running and he couldn't stop. He wasn't tired, even though he was panting. It was as if a mechanical system allowed him to run while recharging. He continued his race against time, needing to get as far as possible before daylight. If he didn't move far enough, they would catch up to him. How long had it been since he escaped his prison? The night was still young, only a few hours had passed. But he couldn't stop. He stopped. Something made him halt. Or rather, someone. There was a toddler wrapped in white-gray clothes in the middle of a small alleyway, not even crying, seemingly asleep. What was a baby doing here? Who would abandon a child in the city like that? He didn't have the luxury to leave the child there. If he did, the cycle would start over the pain, the experiments, the despair. They would take the poor child to replace him. They would stop chasing him if he abandoned this child. He would be safe. So he did the only thing he could do. He took the fragile being in his arms protectively and ran into the darkness of the night. That night, a green metallic humanoid was seen carrying a tightly wrapped toddler, both running as if their lives depended on it. From Izuku's perspective, it felt a bit strange at first. Destroying robots one after another when he was one himself wasn't the best experience, but the world wouldn't wait for him to adapt. He had to keep up. So he did what he was asked: destroy some bad bots, again and again. It still felt odd. One pointer on the left? A quick, blind hook and it was over. 3 pointers up front? A front flip with a kick and the story was finished. Rocket incoming? Grab it, redirect it toward another if possible. If not, just dispose of it. No trouble at all. No need to panic, he could do this. Until the big bad bot showed up. That one was intimidating and a waste of time for him to deal with. He thought about leaving it alone but decided against it. A poor, nice girl was about to get crushed. It was cliché, but Eri wouldn't be happy if he let her down. He had promised her he would be the best hero in the world. So he rushed to her, lifted the piece of concrete blocking her, and carried her to safety. He lost a good minute doing so, but he destroyed a few robots on the way, so it wasn't a total waste of time. The 0-pointer was enormous, and he didn't confront it directly. Instead, he stayed nearby, ensuring no one was in serious trouble while taking down pointers here and there. As time ran out, Present Mike announced the end of the test, thanking everyone for their hard work and asking the injured to rest while the medical staff attended to them. Izuku hoped he hadn't done too poorly. He still managed to score a solid 52 points, and from what he heard, most people were around 20 to 30 points by the end of the test. So he felt good about his performance. As he left the school grounds, he noticed most people looked exhausted. He couldn't blame them. The day had been tough. Though he wasn't tired, he decided not to appear too fine, as that might come off as arrogant. The last thing he needed was to make enemies among his potential classmates. They said they would receive the results in a week to sort everything out. Why would they need a week for this? It was a mystery at the time. Perhaps they were ensuring they didn't miss any points, considering the number of participants. And there were probably other entrance exams to process. Why was he worried about this anyway? It didn't entirely concern him. When he got home, he thought Eri might be waiting for him. He knew she was intelligent and responsible, but she would worry if he came back too late. A week later, waiting for the letter that would change the course of his life was incredibly stressful. At 3:30 p.m., he guessed the time was right and went to check the mailbox. Sure enough, there it was, the water bill, and right underneath it, the UA letter. He took it with shaking hands, completely disregarding the first paper. He made his way to his desk and opened it. All Might appeared as a hologram, and he couldn't believe that the legendary hero was working at UA and sending out acceptance letters. He might have fanboyed a bit. He listened as All Might explained that he had received one of the highest villain points, which would have been enough to enroll at UA. Then he mentioned a secret examination parameter, the rescue points system, rewarding examinees based on their heroics during the practical test. That was why they needed a week. It was for those heroic points. Mystery solved. So saving that girl wasn't a waste of time after all. Thanks to this system, he received a whopping 48 bonus points, placing him in second place with a total of 100 points. He felt calm, absolutely not freaking out on the inside, even though he didn't talk like he did today. Suddenly, he heard a voice asking what was nice, and he nearly had a heart attack. Izuku was so focused on the letter that he forgot Eri was there. She was the very reason he wanted to be a hero, the most precious person in his life. Though they weren't related by blood, neither of them remembered anyone else, so he took care of her, and in return, she showered him with all the love and support a sweet and innocent child could give to her only family. He would do anything to keep her safe and happy, and he knew this task would be challenging. However, he never imagined that protecting her bright smile would be so difficult, though it was completely worth it. He had passed the first and second steps with ease, so perhaps his perspective was a bit skewed, but he felt he had done well so far. As he stood in front of the majestic UA High School, Izuku's first thought was that he was finally here. His trademark nervous grin was firmly in place. As he navigated the corridors, he lost his way, cursing himself for not being accustomed to such large buildings. While trying to orient himself, he accidentally bumped into someone. The boy in front of him was slightly shorter, with half-white, half-red hair and dual-colored eyes, along with what appeared to be a burn scar on his left eye. Izuku quickly apologized, expressing concern for the other boy's well-being. The boy responded curtly, indicating his classroom was nearby. As Izuku turned to look, he realized he had just passed right in front of his own classroom, feeling foolish for losing his way so easily. Upon entering the classroom, he heard a voice reprimanding a student for putting his feet on the desk, emphasizing respect for the furniture and the upperclassmen who had used it before. Izuku recognized the tall, deep blue-haired student who had asked for clarification regarding the practical test a week ago. He seemed energetic and wore glasses. The spiky-haired teen with ruby eyes, however, responded with a disrespectful retort, making Izuku grateful that Eri wasn't there to hear such language. The blue-haired student introduced himself as Tenya Ida from Sumai Middle School and insisted that the other student's vocabulary was inappropriate for a hero in training. The spiky-haired teen dismissed him, boasting about his own abilities. Just then, someone tapped Izuku on the shoulder from behind, startling him. A girl with gravity-defying chestnut hair and wide brown eyes praised him for his performance during the entrance exams, expressing admiration for how he had helped everyone while defeating the robots. Izuku felt flustered by the attention and tried to hide his face, stammering that he had only done what he could. Before the girl could continue, their teacher interrupted, stating that if they were there to socialize, they should leave, as this was the hero course, not a management class. The atmosphere shifted as a large yellow caterpillar transformed into a tired-looking man, who introduced himself as Aizawa Shoda, their homeroom teacher for the year. He emphasized the importance of time and instructed the students to change into their sports suits for training. When one student questioned the absence of an entrance ceremony or orientation class, Aizawa explained that teachers at UA had the freedom to train their students as they saw fit. He announced they would be conducting physical tests similar to those in middle school, but this time incorporating their quirks. He called for Ida to start with the 50-meter dash. Ida sprinted across the field, using the engines in his calves to achieve an impressive time. Some students expressed excitement about using their quirks, but Aizawa quickly reminded them that whoever finished last would be expelled. A protest erupted from the chestnut-haired girl, but Aizawa remained firm, stating that the challenges they would face in the real world were not fair, and expulsion on the first day was part of the training. As the test began, students took turns running the 50 meters, some utilizing their quirks to enhance their performance. Izuku prepared for his turn, determined to run as fast as he could, and when it was finally his moment, he gave it everything he had. Even though he was paired up with Bakugo, who used his explosions to propel himself forward, the blast would have slowed the android down if he hadn't gotten ahead of the sand-haired teen right from the start. Izuku anticipated the explosions. After all, Bakugo was more than happy to make his hands spark, and the young robot wanted to avoid being caught in them. Izuku achieved a respectable time of 3.15 seconds, just slightly slower than the blue-haired student. After that, the tests went smoothly, with nearly everyone achieving superhuman results in various areas. Izuku excelled, breaking human records everywhere thanks to his quirk, which granted him extra strength and speed. He wasn't the only one doing well. Bakugo, the dual-haired teen, and a raven-haired girl also performed admirably. Bakugo utilized his explosions, the dual-haired student used ice, and the girl cleverly created gadgets and equipment to enhance her performance based on the tests. In the end, everyone did great, but Izuku hoped the final test wouldn't be too disheartening. He reassured himself that at least he wasn't in last place. When Aizawa revealed the results, a short purple-haired boy dropped his head in shock, only to quickly lift it with a bewildered expression when the teacher admitted with his trademark grin that the threat they faced was a fake, intended to motivate them during the test. The raven-haired girl, named Yaoyorozu, had seen through the ruse and was not surprised at all. What none of the students knew, however, was that the threat had been real. The merciless teacher had simply changed his mind at the last moment, deciding that even Mineta had potential as a hero. As the day came to a close, the final bell rang, and Izuku packed his belongings, eager to fetch his little protégé. He ignored his classmates who tried to catch up with him, leaving them behind. It wasn't that he intended to be cold, he simply wasn't ready to face so many new faces at once. Up until now, the only friendly person he remembered meeting was the one he had raised himself. Everyone else had either completely ignored him or been cruel. He wasn't prepared to trust anyone just yet, but perhaps he could start socializing tomorrow. Once outside the building, he accidentally bumped into someone. All he managed to see was a teal-eyed redhead. He hurriedly apologized and moved on, leaving her wondering about the green-haired figure who had rushed past like a flash. Tuesday morning arrived with the sun already shining. Eri woke up to see her guardian angel cooking breakfast just for her, as he didn't need to eat. Izuku, being a robot, recharged himself using solar or wind power when no one was watching, except for Eri. She was aware of his secret, and he knew hers, creating a bond between them that they kept hidden from the world. What Eri didn't realize was that this secrecy was necessary to protect them both. If his true quirk were revealed, it could lead to disastrous consequences for them and the world. Izuku made sure to shield her from the harsh realities of life, wanting to preserve the innocence in her bright eyes. He kept the darkest parts of their secret to himself, always wearing a brave and cheerful face. After finishing her breakfast, Eri prepared for school. Unlike her protector, she didn't have a perfect memory and needed to attend classes. Izuku went to UA because it was essential for becoming a hero. Eri had a few friends in another class who were lively and kind, even if they often got into trouble. However, two things saddened her. She couldn't bring her friends home because their parents refused, and her classmates seemed to avoid her. She didn't understand why, so she stopped trying to connect with them. Instead, she focused on her studies, earning good grades. While it didn't improve her relationships with her classmates, she cherished her friends and, most importantly, her brother. In public, she called him brother, but at home, she referred to him as Papa. He had cared for her for as long as she could remember, and she learned from a book that boys who take care of younger people are called dad, with Papa being a cute term. He had been flustered at first but eventually embraced the nickname, ready to take on the responsibility. When the last bell rang, Eri packed her things and went to play with her friends, waiting for her brother to pick her up. This routine had been the same for the past year, and sure enough, he arrived with his ever-present smile, walking calmly as if everything in the world was perfectly fine. In her eyes, her world was perfect, thanks to Izuku. He had hidden her from the outside world, even going so far as to tell others that her quirk only gave her a horn on the right side of her forehead. He promised to reveal the truth only when she was ready. As he approached her, Eri noticed the concerned glances from the school staff. They had been looking at him with worry for a year, and while she had grown accustomed to it, she still didn't understand why they regarded him that way. She said goodbye to her friends and headed home, passing through a peaceful neighborhood filled with nice houses and cool heroes. Izuku had taught her that the tranquility of their area was largely due to UA High School, describing the campus as a powerful beacon of light that swept away all darkness. Once home, Eri began her homework while Izuku attended to his tasks. Last year, his days mainly revolved around helping her with her exercises and preparing for entrance exams. Nowadays, the only difference is that he does his own homework instead of studying for the exam. In the end, not much has changed, he just seems more relaxed, which is nice. Around 7 p.m., he starts cooking dinner for her. He's not a chef, so his meals are often simple, but he excels at what he does. Except for Fridays, when he makes beautifully complicated meals that are always delicious. She looks forward to those meals, especially since they manage to create incredible dishes on a low income. He truly is impressive. Today, he made noodles. Simple, yet tasty just like usual. As she eats, a bit of water splashes on her. It's hot, but it doesn't hurt. She has a towel to protect herself. Izuku glances in her direction to check if she is all right. She is, so he returns to his cooking. Eri is an intelligent and responsible girl, and him not bothering her while she eats is proof of that. They will have plenty of time to cuddle together once she finishes her daily duties. Their apartment is small, consisting of only 2 rooms. The living room serves as their homework space and kitchen, where Eri eats. It also contains their beds, though Izuku's bed is actually the couch. The other room is the bathroom, which is self-explanatory. When Eri isn't feeling well, or when Izuku is in a particularly good mood, they sleep together on the couch. Today, he seems especially happy, even more so than on Monday. Yesterday, he had approached her with a big, bright smile. He didn't tell her anything, and Eri, exhausted from her full day, fell into a calm and deep slumber on the couch after finishing her work. She could always ask him later. The couch is large enough for both of them to sink into comfortably. They have more than enough space to sleep there, and since they cuddle each time, a third person could fit too. But Eri never thought to invite anyone else. She was content with her father and the way things were. On Tuesday, Izuku wakes up. As a robot, he doesn't sleep in the traditional sense but goes into rest mode to optimize his body. He is aware of his surroundings during this time. Once he comes out of his slumber, he begins preparing for the day, which includes cooking Eri's breakfast and ensuring all their school supplies are packed. Once Eri is ready, he accompanies her to school before heading to UA. He makes a dash to arrive on time, crossing the classroom door just before the bell rings. As he heads toward his desk, his classmates, Uraraka and Ida, approach him and start a conversation. To Izuku's surprise, the discussion flows smoothly. Uraraka introduces herself, explaining that her quirk allows her to suppress the weight of anything she touches with one hand. Ida follows suit, sharing that his quirk grants him engines in his calves, enabling him to move at high speed. Izuku stammers as he introduces himself, mentioning that his quirk gives him some strength and speed. Uraraka and Ida are taken aback, insisting that he is much faster than he realizes and that his strength is impressive. They encourage him not to underestimate himself, as it could hinder his growth. To Izuku, who has faced hardship and often felt looked down upon, this praise is a new experience. He barely knows these two, yet they are complimenting him. If he could, he would be tearing up, but his body had long ago decided that tears were a waste of resources. Seeing his strange expression, Uraraka and Ida become concerned. They had intended to uplift him, but he looks like he might cry. He reassures them that he is fine, explaining that it's just the first time someone has said such nice things to him. He thanks them, though he knows his daughter's support doesn't count in this context. Their reaction flusters them, but seeing Izuku genuinely happy, with a bright smile on his face, fills them with warmth. They all share a heartfelt laugh, which is abruptly interrupted when Aizawa-sensei enters the classroom. Despite the teacher's tired demeanor, he doesn't seem to mind their cheerful expressions. Once homeroom ends, someone bursts through the door, announcing their arrival with enthusiasm. It is All Might, the #1 hero, now teaching at UA. His imposing figure and grinning demeanor make him look like an invincible mountain of muscles. Izuku can't help but think that All Might is even more intimidating in person than on screen. His sensors go into overdrive, indicating that the hero before him is far more powerful than he is. He almost panics at the realization, unable to join his friends in their admiration. After calming down, Izuku realizes they are about to start actual hero training, including the more intense aspects. They need to put on their hero costumes, and he hopes his isn't too embarrassing. A few minutes later, he is the first to emerge in his costume. The first thing he notices is how flashy and personalized his classmates' outfits are. In comparison, he feels rather plain in his sleeveless light green sweatshirt with white bands, dark green shorts, and the large red shoes he always wears. He doesn't know why he can't bring himself to wear anything else. That's all. He has no visors, no flashy designs, no trademark details. Nothing. Just a plain-looking outfit, made from ordinary material purchased at a public store. It felt unremarkable. As he lamented his normalcy, his friends joined him and unexpectedly complimented his simple yet stylish costume. It turned out to be a nice design, humble and fitting for his character. Perhaps it wasn't so lame after all. Before long, All Might captured everyone's attention, explaining the rules of their first combat exercise. The scenario was distinctly American. Two villains were hiding a fake nuclear device inside a building. Two heroes had to team up to either capture both villains or retrieve the device by touching it, all within 15 minutes. If they failed, the bomb would explode, granting victory to the villains. If the villains caught the heroes before time ran out, they would win as well. Izuku didn't mind the American-style setup. He had anticipated this, knowing All Might had spent his early years as a pro hero in the USA. Soon, they prepared the teams by drawing lots from a box. When Ida questioned the method, Yaoyorozu Momo explained that it was to prepare them for teaming up with anyone, as emergencies often required unexpected partnerships. Izuku was paired with a cheerful boy named Shiro Hanta. They were assigned as villains against the already infamous Bakugo and the enthusiastic Kirishima. Izuku felt a bit intimidated by the explosive teen. They quickly ascended the stairs and placed the bomb on the 4th floor, creating some distance in case Bakugo decided to attack from above. Shiro's quirk allowed him to shoot tape from his elbows with relative control. Izuku began to analyze his comrade's power, realizing that creating a tape barricade around the bomb could backfire against Bakugo. He explained that Bakugo might use the tape against them and that he would handle him. Izuku was confident in his ability to draw Bakugo's attention, allowing Shiro to focus on Kirishima. He detailed his plan, advising Shiro to confront Kirishima head-on and immobilize him quickly. Once Shiro dealt with Kirishima, he could assist Izuku in blocking Bakugo. Just as they finished strategizing, All Might's voice echoed, announcing that the hero team could enter the building. Izuku felt a rush of adrenaline as Bakugo charged at him, ready to unleash an explosion. The explosive teen had raced up the stairs without waiting for his teammate, catching Izuku off guard. To protect Shiro, Izuku braced himself and absorbed the impact of the blast. In the observation room, the spectators were astonished. They couldn't believe Izuku had taken the explosion without faltering. Yaoyorozu noted that his quirk made him not only fast and strong but also incredibly resilient. Ida praised Izuku's honorable action of taking the hit for his teammate. All Might thought to himself that Izuku was impressively brave. The initial clash left a strong impression on everyone watching. They were aware of the power behind Bakugo's explosions, and seeing someone withstand the hit without budging was remarkable. Back in the fight, Izuku taunted Bakugo, challenging him to do better than his previous attacks. Bakugo, angered, threatened to blast him. Izuku signaled for Shiro to move, not wanting to face both Bakugo and Kirishima at the same time. As Shiro discreetly slipped away, Izuku continued to provoke Bakugo, questioning his strength. Izuku calculated that as long as he stayed out of Bakugo's immediate range, he would be safe. He understood that the explosions created wind, smoke, and noise but avoided close combat, favoring mid-range tactics. Fortunately, Bakugo was too caught up in his own power to notice Izuku's strategy. When Bakugo unleashed another explosion, Izuku remained unharmed, but he was surprised by Bakugo's ability to push through his defenses. Bakugo was fast and powerful, appearing barbaric in battle, yet he was precise, adjusting the force of his explosions to achieve the desired effect. He adapted his tactics on the fly, proving himself a genius in combat. Izuku, however, was not an ordinary opponent. He had been trained from a young age to endure and inflict pain. He had survived with the weight of his experiences, never giving up despite the challenges he faced. He was a true survivor, a warrior, and a hero in training, embodying resilience and determination. Bakugo sensed this strength, recognizing the fierce resolve in Izuku's eyes. It was practically screaming, "I won't back down." He could almost hear it. That's when he started to panic, unleashing explosions left and right. The strangely dangerous opponent in front of him was wearing him down with light attacks. The corridor was in disarray, rubble scattered everywhere. His teammate called out, wondering what was happening. He could hear the concern in their voice, asking if he needed help. He reassured them that he was fine and to keep looking for Kirishima, insisting he could handle things. But the tension escalated. The blonde opponent had his right arm raised, his left hand gripping the pin of his grenade-like gauntlet. As he pulled a smaller pin, the world erupted in orange. The gauntlet stored the teen's palm sweat, which was highly explosive. The resulting fireball struck the Emerald Hero square in the chest, sending him crashing out of the building and into the one across the street, creating a massive cloud of smoke. In the observation room, they felt the shockwave. It was so powerful that they could sense it from their location. Concerned voices filled the air, with all might warning Bakugo that another explosion like that would disqualify him from the exercise. They reminded him that there was a dangerous object inside the building. Back in the fight, Bakugo called out for Deku, anxiously seeking a response. Suddenly, he was struck by a powerful kick to the face, unable to see it coming. He crashed into the wall, his left gauntlet breaking upon impact, causing a smaller explosion that stunned him. Yet he stood up. His determination to win was something no one could underestimate. His legs were unsteady, and his vision blurred, but he thought he saw two emerald green eyes shining through the smoke. Izuku seized the opportunity, pouncing on the hero in training and swiftly restraining him with plastic cuffs. He had narrowly avoided the explosion, only the right side of his costume reduced to ashes, his shorts barely hanging on. At that moment, Zero, his teammate, arrived with a tightly wrapped Kirishima on his shoulders. They declared that both heroes had been captured, and the villain team emerged victorious. A sigh of relief escaped Zero as he checked on his teammate, glad to see he was okay. Izuku explained that his earpiece had broken during the blast, causing the communication issues. Once Kirishima was freed and everyone returned to the observation room, they began the briefing for the first match. Yaoyorozu raised her hand, eager to share her thoughts. She praised Deku for being the most valuable player, noting how he quickly devised a strategy based on the situation. He effectively countered the opponent's strength while keeping Bakugo's explosions away from the bomb. She pointed out that Bakugo had let his emotions take control, forgetting the exercise's objective and causing significant damage. The instructor agreed with her assessment and added that Zero had shown good reflexes by checking on Deku after the fight, emphasizing the importance of being aware of potential injuries. The next teams were announced, with Uraraka and Yaoyorozu as the villains against Ida and Azui as the heroes. The second match was set to begin, promising a battle of wits against strength. Yaoyorozu immediately took charge, devising a plan while Uraraka followed her lead. Meanwhile, the heroes prepared in front of a new building, different from the first one, which had a gaping hole on the 4th floor. After 5 minutes, they were allowed to enter. Initially, nothing happened as Azui and Ida climbed the stairs, thoroughly checking each floor. But as Ida approached a corner, he suddenly lost his footing and found himself floating. Uraraka had ambushed them and was now fleeing, with Azui in pursuit, using her tongue to track Ida. However, as Azui closed in on the anti-gravity girl, she suddenly collapsed, shaking. Yaoyorozu appeared at the corner, wielding a taser in one hand and plastic cuffs in the other. The two heroes were quickly captured, despite Ida's struggles, as a quick electric charge rendered him motionless, floating in midair. Finally, the brunette released him, and they made their way back to the rest of the class. The exercise continued, with some teams winning through sheer force, like Shoto, who transformed the entire building into an ice palace, incapacitating the villains. Other teams won by a narrow margin, such as a small, mischievous boy and a strangely sparkly individual who reached the bomb just in time. Izuku found himself muttering to himself, analyzing his classmates' quirks, their potential and limitations while commenting on their strategies. His peers were often startled by his intense focus and tried to bring him back to reality, only for him to slip back into his thoughts moments later as new quirks and tactics emerged. Eventually, they gave up and allowed him to continue his analysis, slowly getting used to it, though it still unsettled them. At some point, all teams had taken their turn in the field. After a day filled with action and emotions, they began to feel hungry. It was lunchtime, and All Might released the group of starving teens, who immediately rushed to change. Ida reminded them not to run, passionately lecturing about how UA students should behave while performing exaggerated hand gestures. Even Izuku found it distracting, his mind racing to keep up with Ida's robotic movements. He resolved to upgrade his eyesight soon. He thought to himself that if Ida used those movements in battle, it would be a great way to distract opponents. It was a terrifying thought, which startled Uraraka, who was walking beside him. She asked what he was thinking about, and he explained he was contemplating how Ida's arm movements could be utilized in combat. Uraraka agreed, finding it unsettling, and noted how surprisingly fast he was, making it difficult for her to keep up. Izuku remarked that if he struggled, it must be challenging for others too. She then shifted the topic to what they might have for lunch. Izuku mentioned that lunch rush was the cook, so it would be good no matter what. Uraraka then realized she hadn't seen him at lunch the previous day. He admitted he preferred to eat alone due to personal habits, and as he pointed out the changing rooms, he bid her farewell, feeling frustrated by his speech difficulties. Uraraka encouraged him to join them for a meal sometime, and they parted ways. No one saw Izuku until afternoon classes began, and when he appeared, he looked quite pleased with himself. Unbeknownst to them, he had successfully upgraded his visual system, allowing him to follow Ida's movements without issue. At that moment, a boy with yellow hair and a black electric pattern approached him, asking where he had been during lunch. Izuku explained he preferred to eat alone for personal reasons, but he quickly reassured the boy, Kaminari, that he appreciated his company. Kaminari's sulking expression transformed into a smile, drawing the attention of other students who began to gather around them. Kirishima, another classmate, excitedly praised Izuku for his performance in the fight, recalling how he had bravely withstood Bakugo's explosions. Izuku recognized him and felt relieved that he didn't seem to mind their tactics. A pink-haired girl pressed in, eager to know if he could identify her as well. Overwhelmed by the attention, Izuku managed to name her as Mina Ishido. As everyone looked at him expectantly, he felt increasingly anxious. Thankfully, a certain brunette noticed his distress and urged the others to give him some space. They quickly apologized, realizing they had overwhelmed him. As Izuku calmed down, his classmates still hoped he could name them all, but just then, the teacher entered the classroom as the bell rang, signaling the start of English class with present Mike, a pro hero. After classes, Izuku packed his belongings and prepared to leave. Ochako and Tenyo were waiting for him at the door. They mentioned they were heading in the same direction and asked if he took the train home. Izuku explained that he lived nearby and usually walked. Uraraka expressed disappointment but invited him to join them to the station if he wanted. He happily agreed, noting it was on the way. Ida urged them to hurry so they wouldn't miss the train, prompting Uraraka to call out to Izuku to follow them. Izuku reflected on the name Deku, which was often used for him. While it meant useless, he had chosen to embrace it as a part of his identity. He was Izuku Deku, father to Eri Deku, and now a hero in training at UA. He felt proud and happy to live his life, surrounded by friends, family, and purpose. He vowed to protect what he cherished with all his strength, no matter the challenges ahead. Eri woke up to her father gently nudging her shoulder, calling her to rise for school. The previous day had been exhausting, marking the start of a new school year. She quickly got up, knowing that being late was not an option. After finishing her breakfast, she prepared for the day. Izuku had already taken care of everything, from checking her backpack to ensuring she was ready. However, time was running short, so instead of walking Eri to school, He decided to carry her on his shoulders as he ran. Eri was initially confused, as this was a new experience for her. It wasn't that Izuku was unkind, he simply didn't realize that people could do such things. He learned about it while cooking that very morning. As he glanced out the window, he happened to witness a man carrying his son. That was all it took. Eri climbed onto his shoulders and he stood up. Once he was assured that he had a firm hold on her, he started running. Soon enough, Eri began to scream with excitement. He looked up to check on her, and what he saw filled his heart with joy. Eri was giving the world one of the biggest, happiest smiles he had ever seen. It was a beautiful sight, truly. Almost immediately, the greenette's mouth stretched into a grin of his own, enjoying the peacefulness of that Wednesday morning. In that moment, he thought that maybe he could relax a bit. Maybe he could fully enjoy his life without worrying about them, without worrying about anything at all. Yes, he could definitely do that. But first, he needed to get Eri to school and then go to his own. They were still running short on time. At UA, homeroom started. Aizawa looked impossibly tired but was somehow managing to do his job as a teacher. Everyone was starting to get used to this by now. He reviewed the footage from yesterday's training session. Overall, it wasn't bad, but he addressed Bakugo directly, reminding him to stop acting like a child. He had great potential, but his attitude was irrational. Then he turned to Deku, noting that he had made the opposite errors of Bakugo. He hadn't stayed focused enough on the fight at the end. Aizawa emphasized that on the battlefield, one moment of inattention could mean disaster for both himself and those he was supposed to protect. He instructed everyone to keep that in mind. Now that that was dealt with, he moved on to today's topic, which was a last-minute announcement. Every student felt tension build within them, wondering if it was another one of his surprise tests. But when he revealed that they would be electing a class president, the whole class sighed in relief. It was a normal high school activity. Almost immediately, every teen raised their hand, eager to obtain the position. In other courses, this might have been seen as an unwanted burden, but for the young heroes, it was an opportunity to prove themselves and gain leadership experience. Even Izuku raised his arm, albeit sheepishly, but he was no exception to the norm. Ida raised his voice above the commotion, urging everyone to restrain themselves. The position of class president was a sacred responsibility that involved leading the group as a whole. Wanting the position didn't mean being capable, so he proposed they use a vote to determine the best candidate. Kirishima protested, pointing out that everyone would vote for themselves, which wouldn't change anything. Ida argued that those who received more than their own vote would be especially worthy of the position. At this, Izuku perked up, realizing that gaining someone else's trust in such a short time was a quality needed to reassure citizens in danger, befitting of a leader and hero. Aizawa, however, was indifferent, stating that as long as it was done within the hour, he didn't care. Once the voting was finished, the results revealed that Izuku had 4 votes, giving him the lead. Yaoyorozu was elected as vice president with 3 votes. The greenette was dumbstruck, realizing he hadn't even voted for himself. Yaoyorozu stood alongside him, and he felt a pang of disappointment at being so close yet so far. One of the teens commented on how impressive Deku had been during training, while another praised Yaoyorozu for her analysis. Meanwhile, Bakugo was throwing a fit, demanding to know who had voted for Izuku. Shiro and Uraraka could only hope he never found out they were part of the president's supporters. Eventually, homeroom ended, classes continued, and it was finally lunchtime. Izuku accompanied his new friends at their tables, pretending he wasn't hungry. Thankfully, his classmates accepted his excuse, attributing it to the stress of becoming class president. They could understand how uneasy he seemed when he first arrived in class. Ida lectured him on the importance of nourishing themselves properly, as they were growing teens. Izuku expressed disbelief at being elected class president. Uraraka reassured him that he would do a great job, while another friend agreed, recalling how he had shown courage and quick thinking before. Izuku realized that one of his supporters had been Uraraka, and he wondered who the third one was. The brunette theorized it might have been Shiro since they had been partners during practice. When asked about the 4th vote, Izuku admitted he hadn't voted for himself, but for Yaoyorozu, believing she was a good choice. Ida praised him for choosing a worthy deputy, reminding him not to belittle himself. Izuku acknowledged that he hadn't expected to be elected. Uraraka pointed out that he had raised his hand at first, and Ida noted that he had done the same. He explained that he had changed his mind at the last moment. The conversation turned to Ida, who had also considered running for president. When asked why he had changed his mind, he explained that desiring a position didn't mean one could assume it. He had made the decision he felt was most appropriate. Curious, Uraraka asked if Ida came from a wealthy family due to his advanced vocabulary. With a sigh, Ida revealed that he came from a family of professional heroes, with a proud grin as he mentioned his brother, Ingenium, the turbo hero. He admired his brother's leadership and aspired to protect citizens alongside him one day. However, unlike his brother or Izuku, he didn't believe he had what it took to be a leader. Izuku's thoughts were interrupted by a blaring alarm, followed by a robotic voice announcing that Sector 3 had been breached and all students were to evacuate the buildings immediately. Sector 3 had been compromised. As the message echoed through the halls, a wave of urgency swept over the students, causing them to move in a frenzy. Panic began to spread as the three friends recalled the warning from an upperclassman that a Level 3 breach indicated intruders on school grounds. This was serious. In the chaos, students jostled each other, creating an overwhelming tide that swept everyone along. Izuku lost sight of Ida and quickly grabbed the brunette's hand to keep her close. In the rush, her fingertips brushed against him, and he found himself lifted off the ground. From his elevated position, he spotted Ida pressed against a window. It was then that he noticed the commotion outside. Journalists had somehow infiltrated the area, crowding the front yard while Eraserhead and Present Mike worked to hold them back. At least there was no immediate danger. With this in mind, Izuku thought of a way to calm the panicking students below. He noticed where their attention was focused: the exit sign. Grabbing a nearby pillar, he propelled himself toward the green light, crashing against the wall. He knew he had to speak up. He declared that everything was fine and that the intruders were just journalists, urging everyone to remain calm for a smooth evacuation. His words seemed to resonate, and soon the noise subsided as the crowd exited the room in an orderly fashion, under the watchful gaze of the hero in training. Once the area was clear, he asked the brunette to let him down. He landed softly on the ground, where a few classmates who had stayed behind praised him for his quick thinking and bravery. A timid light flickered in his eyes as he began to worry that he might have come off as arrogant for showing off. Eventually, his friends managed to guide him back to class, with Ida reminding them that they were still in the midst of an evacuation. Once they returned, the story of how Exit Deku had calmed the frenzied crowd spread among the students. It became clear that he would make an excellent class president, despite the protests from an irritable classmate. At UA's main entrance, the scene was unsettling. The 3-foot-thick steel door lay in ruins, reduced to a pile of rust. The school's principal, a humanoid rodent, felt a sense of unease. This was no ordinary act of vandalism. Someone had aided the journalists, and while they were bothersome, they wouldn't have gone so far as to destroy school property. A teacher in an astronaut suit posed the question on everyone's mind, wondering if this should be viewed as a declaration of war. The principal remained silent, aware that as the head of the school, he needed to respond appropriately. However, the lack of information made it difficult to determine the right course of action. Who was responsible? How had they managed to reduce a steel door to rust so quickly? Was this a one-time incident or the beginning of something much larger? After a lengthy deliberation, Principal Nizu made his decision. They would continue with their normal schedule for now, but everyone was to remain vigilant. They wouldn't allow a minor incident to disrupt their routine. With that, he sent the students off to their classes. In Class 1A's homeroom, the atmosphere was lively. Students chatted excitedly about the morning's events, particularly the journalist's bold intrusion and the newly appointed class president who had managed to calm a panicked crowd with just a few words. Izuku felt a mix of embarrassment and pride as the chatter faded the moment Aizawa entered the room, his piercing red eyes silencing the noise. Aizawa addressed the class, stating that despite the morning's troubles, the schedule remained unchanged. He instructed them to stop wasting time and to retrieve their hero costumes, meeting him at the parking lot afterward. Gathering his courage, Izuku, as class president, asked what the purpose of the trip was. His voice trembled, but he pressed on. The teacher's response was straightforward: they would learn what rescuing looked like. At the UA parking lot, 20 teenagers in costumes and a single weary teacher prepared to board the bus waiting for them. Under Izuku's nervous direction, they boarded the vehicle, albeit with some noise. During the ride, the students introduced themselves and their quirks, as some were still unfamiliar to the class. At one point, a girl with long green hair sitting next to Izuku introduced herself. Tiu Azui, as she called herself, stated that her policy was to always speak her mind and noted that his quirk resembled All Might's. Izuku was taken aback, surprised by the comparison. Kirishima chimed in, pointing out that while Izuku's quirk was impressive, it wasn't on the same level as All Might's. He expressed that with such a flashy quirk, Izuku could become very popular. He then shared that his own quirk was hardening, which was useful for combat but not particularly flashy. Izuku, feeling a bit overwhelmed, began to mutter about how he thought Kirishima's quirk was cool too, but thankfully, Tsuyu interrupted him, reminding him that he was scaring the others. Bakugo, a classmate with spiky hair, added his own commentary, teasingly suggesting that his angry demeanor would scare children away. This sparked a playful exchange between him and another classmate, leading to some light-hearted banter. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu expressed her disapproval of the raucous atmosphere, while Uraraka found it enjoyable. The ride continued in a cheerful mood, leading the students toward their next adventure. Once the bus arrived at the USJ's main entrance, the teenagers disembarked one by one, followed by their teacher. In front of the massive dome structure stood a figure in a space-like suit, their helmet featuring large white eyes. It was 13, the space hero. Uraraka couldn't contain her excitement, starry-eyed at the sight of her idol. Izuku wanted to become like the heroes he admired in the future. However, while most of his classmates were buzzing about the upcoming training, Izuku's keen senses picked up on a few words that sent a chill down his spine. There was concern about All Might's absence as he was supposed to meet them there. The truth was that All Might had exhausted his strength and was resting in the restroom. This revelation seemed irrational to the students, but they decided to proceed without him. As 13 continued to explain how quirks could become dangerous weapons and the importance of using them responsibly, Izuku found himself caught in a whirlwind of thoughts. The idea that All Might, a figure of immense power, had limits was hard for him to accept. While others might have been shocked, Izuku's mind, which functioned like a computer, began to malfunction. He fell into a state of confusion, his eyes blank as he struggled to process this new information. When the class began to descend the stairs toward the center of the USJ, Izuku remained frozen in place, unresponsive to Uraraka's calls. Just then, Kirishima alerted the teachers to a new threat. A black mist began to swirl ominously, revealing figures in menacing costumes entering the central plaza. The pro-heroes reacted swiftly, instructing everyone to evacuate while 13 took charge of protecting the students. As Eraserhead leaped toward the villains, the class scattered. Izuku still did not move even as the mist coalesced into a more defined shape, revealing itself as the League of Villains. They announced their intent to end All Might's legacy, demanding that the students remain still. Before the villain could finish, Bakugo and Kirishima charged at him, but their efforts were in vain as the villain remained unharmed. The black mist enveloped the students, and Izuku continued to stand motionless. In a heartbeat, half of the class had vanished. Uraraka felt the pull of despair as the darkness threatened to consume her, desperately clinging to Izuku, who remained unyielding. Then, in a flash, Izuku sprang into action, moving with a speed that left others in awe. He tackled the villain to the ground, causing the black mist to recede. However, the damage had already been done. Several classmates were missing, scattered throughout the USJ. The villain, shocked by Izuku's strength and speed, began to panic, realizing he was in danger. As the villain attempted to escape, Izuku applied pressure to the collar around the villain's neck, causing it to creak ominously. The villain sensed an even greater threat approaching, one that sent shivers down his spine. Izuku dodged just in time to avoid a powerful strike from a massive creature that had emerged from the shadows. Without hesitation, he grabbed the beast and hurled it back down the stairs, momentarily removing the threat. Looking toward the central plaza, Izuku saw Aizawa lying on the ground, injured and in need of help. He knew they had to act quickly. He turned to Ida, urging him to run back to UA for assistance. Though Ida hesitated, Izuku insisted, reminding him that it was an order. Once Ida was on his way, Izuku faced the remaining villains, who glared at him with wild eyes. Despite his fear, Izuku felt an unshakable determination. He wanted to run away, to find safety, but something held him in place. He felt a sense of duty, as if he were a guardian standing against the darkness. Memories of his father's words echoed in his mind, reinforcing his resolve. Izuku was ready to fight for his friends and protect what mattered most. Your father is the strongest, the greatest in the entire world. That's what the child believed. The teacher had explained that when people are strong and kind, they become heroes. Since her father embodied both strength and kindness, he was the best hero in the world. At that moment, everything clicked for him. If he became a hero, he would receive support from the government and be able to protect Eri from any threat. He would also be able to respond to the expectant eyes looking up at him, filled with love and admiration. Finally, he could confront those who had tormented him for so long, those he still feared. They had tried to turn him into a villain, but what better revenge than to defeat them as a hero? It was the perfect goal, the ideal path for both him and his daughter. He had acted like a hero when he took her with him on that fateful night, and he knew that this was the path he had to follow. He felt a small smile form on his lips, a new light shining in his eyes. He didn't look back as he jumped down, ignoring the calls from his friends and teacher. He had told Eri that he was a hero, the best one. She would be disappointed if he ran away from danger, especially when there were people who needed his protection. Once he landed, he walked straight toward the villains, glaring at them the entire way. As if they had agreed beforehand, the thugs parted, allowing him to approach what seemed to be the core fighting force of the attackers. The black mist and the hulking beast stood beside a man with light blue hair, dressed in a full black tracksuit, with gray coverings obscuring his face and upper body. Even so, Izuku could see a pair of crazed red eyes that made the thugs seem tame in comparison. Whoever this man was, he was significant. The man taunted him, acknowledging Izuku as the hero he had heard about. He could feel the disdain in the man's voice, realizing that he was the one Kurogyari had warned him about. The man then asked if Izuku had come to beg for his life or to offer a challenge. Izuku declared that he was there to fight back, surprising himself with the harshness of his words. The man responded by instructing a creature named Nomu to engage with him. The creature and Izuku stared each other down, and then the fight began. He understood better than anyone, better than his classmates or teachers, that the beast before him was incredibly powerful, on par with All Might. There was no way for him to gauge its true strength, but one fact was clear: he would not be able to defeat this monster with his current abilities. It was a lost battle, a desperate struggle, but he stood his ground. Though he was nearly 6 feet tall and had a build that could rival most adults, in front of the 8-foot-tall monster, he felt like a child. A frail, weak child. Perhaps that was what he was, a small boy trying to fight back against an overwhelming force. But wasn't that what he had always done? Struggling against the invincible power of abusive adults throughout his life? He had come this far and wasn't going to give up now. There was nowhere to run. It was too late for that. So he stood firm, even as the monstrous power of Nomu rushed toward him. He activated his last resort, Overdrive. This ability temporarily boosted his powers, surging through his circuits and pushing his body to its limits. He had nothing else to rely on except for his remarkable resilience, which had been compared to that of cockroaches due to his stubbornness in holding on to life and sanity. Ironically, Overdrive was the last gift his tormentors had given him, developed after he endured a trial he thought he could never face again. As soon as he gained this ability, he used it to escape. It had proven effective before, and he hoped it would not fail him now. A few moments earlier, the fight had begun. As soon as the signal was given, both fighters blurred into motion, closing the distance between them in an instant. Their fists collided with tremendous force, creating a shockwave that swept through the area. The ground cracked under the power of their clash, a battle between titans, not a mere skirmish. No one dared to interfere. While both fighters seemed evenly matched at first, the Nomu proved to be the stronger of the two, remaining steadfast while Izuku was pushed back. However, he didn't let it deter him. He charged back at his opponent, fists colliding once more. As the match progressed, the two powerhouses increased their speed. Most onlookers could barely see their attacks, only perceiving a whirlwind of wind, dust, and shockwaves. The cacophony of their battle echoed around them, neither contestant willing to back down. It was a breathtaking spectacle. The villain leader was taken aback, realizing that Kurogiri's warnings about the boy's speed and strength had not prepared him for this. He had expected a brief resistance, not a fight that rivaled his greatest weapon. The surprise left him momentarily speechless. Meanwhile, the students watched in awe as Izuku displayed a level of power they had never witnessed before. As the initial confusion faded, a sense of hope began to blossom among them. Maybe, just maybe, if it was like this, they stood a chance. Izuku could win this and drive the villains away. Perhaps they were safe after all. As hope began to spread among them, some cried, some prayed, and others rooted for their friend. Unfortunately, that hope was about to be tested. A gasp of confusion escaped Uraraka's lips. Had she seen wrong? No, she was certain. Izuku had taken a step back. No, he had taken two by now. She wasn't alone in her realization. 13 and Shoji had definitely noticed too, judging by their shivers. Soon, despair washed over them as they all understood what was happening. Izuku was losing. He was being pushed back. Despite his struggle, the beast was too strong in the end. Desperate thoughts raced through their minds, urging him to hold on. Down the stairs, Izuku had seen the punch coming. The moment he noticed the Nomu's attack closing in, he knew he wouldn't be able to block it. His arm was not in a condition to withstand such force. His protective shell, once strong, was now compromised. His mechanical muscles were strained, and his joints were on the verge of failure. When their arms collided, the sound of his own arm breaking echoed in the air. The black mass continued its assault, striking him and causing significant damage. But none of that truly mattered. His body, built like a machine, meant that sustaining damage only reduced his abilities temporarily. He could repair himself later. However, his classmates did not share that advantage. Izuku was the only barrier between those villains and his friends. If they got past him, he wouldn't allow that. He had to stand his ground, even if it meant enduring more pain. All he needed to do was buy time. He had sent Ida to fetch the pros, and every second counted. Reinforcements would turn the tide. He just had to hold on until then. With determination, he stood back up and took his stance. He was ready for round 2. He felt the weight of the situation. Despite his condition, he pressed on, questioning how the Nomu seemed unaffected by his attacks. He could crush a car easily, yet the creature didn't even budge. It was then he learned about the Nomu's quirk shock absorption. It could withstand attacks that would normally be devastating. The realization sent a chill through him. Had they really found him after all these years? No, he couldn't let doubt creep in now. For everyone's sake, he had to fight. Once again, both fighters leaped toward each other, prepared to end the confrontation. This time, Izuku chose a different approach. Instead of engaging in a fistfight, he leaped above the Nomu's attack, extending his fingers like a blade, and slashed at the beast's arm. It was a gamble, but the villains had made a mistake by giving him a moment to recover. They would pay for their arrogance. To his surprise, his improvised blade penetrated the Nomu's flesh with ease. It seemed the creature lacked defenses against slashing and piercing attacks. Perhaps he stood a chance after all. As he landed behind the beast, he inflicted another wound on its side. If he continued this way, victory was within reach. A game of cat and mouse ensued. For what felt like an eternity, but was only a few minutes, the Nomu tried to catch him while he evaded with all his might, gradually wearing down the creature with each slash. The more he progressed, the slower the beast became. He was winning. But then, something changed. The Nomu wasn't slowing down anymore, it was getting faster. It remained calm, which sent alarm bells ringing in Izuku's mind. He quickly realized that the cuts he had inflicted were healing, as if he had never damaged it at all. Panic set in. If this continued, he would never take the creature down. His time was running out. With the battery he had left, it was only a matter of seconds before his overdrive would shut down. That was its main weakness. He didn't have an unlimited energy supply. While overdrive boosted his abilities, it consumed energy at an alarming rate. As the countdown reached its final moments, Izuku's body powered down, and his movements came to a halt. He stood in the middle of the plaza, a wry, broken smile forming on his lips. How arrogant had he been to think he stood a chance? All along, the Nomu had been toying with him, a mere plaything in the eyes of those villains. And here he thought he could do it. Soon enough, the beast's left hand grabbed his torso. It was so large that it easily wrapped its fingers around him. Izuku didn't resist. He had used up all his strength and was now just a doll in their hands. Just as the teen had given up on fighting, the villain's leader decided that pushing the blade further was an entertaining idea. He laughed, expressing his delight at the situation. He declared that Izuku would be the first to die, ensuring that he wouldn't have to witness his friends' deaths, but warned that it wouldn't be painless. With that, he placed all 5 fingers of his hand on Izuku's remaining arm. The instant he did, the incredibly tough metal seemed to wither away, as if death itself had decided to take it with her. It took Izuku a moment to acknowledge the pain. He had forgotten what it felt like to suffer for real. Years of illusory safety had led him to this moment, where fate had decided to remind him of his vulnerabilities. The burning sensation was horrific, even for someone like him. He recalled the small matter of his right arm, which had been crushed minutes ago. He had anticipated that pain and managed to shut it down before it could overwhelm him. But this time, he hadn't expected to suffer so easily. This time, he was taken by surprise. As the cracks spread on his arm, he feared that the destruction would reach his head and the rest of his body. If it did, even he wouldn't be able to recover from that. Then, he heard the command to tear off his arm. The pain came instantly, and he gasped in agony. The villain continued, noting that Izuku didn't have blood, so if they ripped him apart, he wouldn't die. However, he didn't get to finish his sentence. Black mist enveloped him and transported him away just before a wave of ice covered his location. A voice warned Shigaraki to be careful, as there seemed to be other students ready to fight. Izuku's keen ear picked up the sounds of approaching footsteps. For people were rushing toward him, and he could guess who was responsible for the explosions. Behind Bakugo was Kirishima, and the 2 figures coming from the stairs were 13 and Uraraka. Izuku wondered what she was doing there. Her quirk wasn't suitable for fighting, and she needed to fall back. But they weren't going to give up. He realized that if he wanted to be saved, he would have to work for it, but he didn't have the energy anymore. Then a thought struck him. There was a way that didn't require the use of overdrive. It was a gamble, but if he succeeded, hope was permitted. This was a last-ditch effort, and he had to make it work. He lifted his damaged right arm and released everything: the pain, the energy, the last remnants of power within him surged out, forcing the Nomu to release him. Izuku fell, but a pair of arms caught him, making his weight feel light. As he was dragged away, he issued a silent warning. Sometimes, when facing an absolute threat, humans are gifted with incredible abilities for a brief moment. Such was the case for the 4 students rushing to save their comrade from powerful villains. They managed to put together a battle plan and coordinate without a single word or glance exchanged. First, Todoroki forced the villain's leader to retreat and then froze the Nomu. Bakugo followed up with a massive explosion, blasting the beast away without harming his fellow student. Meanwhile, Uraraka rendered her fallen friend weightless and quickly withdrew from the battlefield, while Kirishima prepared to cover her retreat. Todoroki and Bakugo continued to pressure their enemies. The entire sequence unfolded so quickly and smoothly that the criminals didn't even have time to issue an order to the Nomu. For a moment, the Black Mist thought he was facing a team of seasoned pros accustomed to working together. They were considered the elite of the new generation, and it was clear they were dangerous. Uraraka, carrying Izuku, noticed he was trying to communicate something. She slowed down, leaned in, and listened intently. She barely made out his words amidst the chaos. He warned her about the Nomu's shock absorption, regeneration, and speed, emphasizing its danger. A strange light flickered in her eyes as she reassured him that they too were dangerous. Izuku didn't respond. Ochako turned her attention to Kirishima, relaying the information about the beast's multiple abilities. However, it didn't have the effect he expected. The villain's leader laughed maniacally, declaring that the Nomu was specially modified to defeat All Might and that ignorant brats like them couldn't hope to measure up. He commanded the Nomu to kill the girl and catch the green boy. The situation shifted instantly. The Nomu pounced forward with monstrous might, shattering the defenses Todoroki had put in place. It surged past the three guardians in a flash, appearing right behind its prey. An instant earlier, Uraraka promised Izuku that she would get him out of there. She was still running, the sharp pain in her side from Izuku's injuries reminding her of her task. Despite the overwhelming fear coursing through her, she sprinted toward the exit. Though she lacked the strength to directly assist her classmates in their fight, she could relieve them of their burden. This was her duty. A powerful chill ran down her spine as the world around her darkened unexpectedly. A sense of extreme urgency and terror gripped her. Without thinking, she pushed forward with all the strength her body could muster, tumbling a few meters further, Izuku in tow. In the chaos, she caught a glimpse of what was behind her, and the sight froze her in place. The Nomu stood there, arms crossed as if cradling something, a bewildered expression on its face. A flash of realization struck Ochako. If she hadn't jumped, if she had been just a moment slower, that creature would have crushed her. She had narrowly escaped death. The look in the beast's eyes shifted. The next few moments felt like they were in slow motion, silence enveloping the scene. All three of her makeshift guardians rushed to her side. The Nomu extended its hands toward her, but she found herself paralyzed, her body refusing to respond. The two ominous hands drew closer. Clinging to her friend's lifeless body, she closed her eyes, terrorized by the impending doom, silently praying for someone to save her. But the expected pain never came. She reopened her eyes to find a figure standing protectively in front of her, blocking her from harm. In that moment, time resumed its normal pace. She realized she wasn't going to perish at the hands of that monster. She was saved. The muscular figure filling her vision belonged to none other than the #1 hero, All Might. His voice boomed with authority, declaring his presence. The relief washed over her as he seized the Nomu's arm, effectively halting its advance. Tears of relief streamed down her cheeks. All Might gathered his strength and hurled the beast away. Finally, the three fighters reached her. Todoroki's calm voice warned the hero of the Nomu's capabilities. Be careful, that Nomu has been modified to fight you. It possesses shock absorption and regeneration, as well as strength and speed. Thank you, young Todoroki, for the information. Now fall back, it's my turn to handle this. The villain, eager for destruction, commanded the Nomu to attack. A dangerous light ignited in All Might's eyes as he observed the state of his students' terror, pain, and despair etched on their faces. But more than anything, he saw the injuries of his green pupil. The warmth and protectiveness in his gaze were replaced by the fierce flames of wrath and guilt. He welcomed the challenge. What followed left the students and the villain in a state of shock. It was no longer a struggle of a human against a Goliath, but an all-out clash between two titans. The two massive figures collided, unleashing earth-shattering attacks in a frenzied battle. A whirlwind of dust rose high into the air, reaching the dome above. Each impact held the power to reduce a building to rubble. The pinnacle of strength was on display. Unexpectedly, the Nomu began to retreat. With each step back, All Might pressed harder. The despair that had once consumed the students began to fade, replaced by a glimmer of hope. At one point, the beast learned the harsh lesson of flying after taking a punch. It quickly rejoined the fray, shattering the ground beneath it. However, All Might was faster. With his incredible power, he leaped straight toward his opponent and delivered a powerful uppercut, launching the beast into the sky. Have you ever heard those words, villains? Plus ultra. The Nomu collided with the dome like a meteor, breaking through and creating a massive hole. The impact was so tremendous that the entire structure shook, and glass shattered into countless pieces, raining down on the area below. The light reflecting off the fragments created the illusion of a golden, heavenly rain. The villain who had once easily overwhelmed the students was now defeated by an even more powerful force, the symbol of peace. In the UA meeting room, President Mike broke the silence, unable to bear it any longer. "How's it looking?" "Bad," Midnight replied. "Not only did we let the villains catch us off guard, but one of the students is in a terrible condition. The teachers accompanying them aren't in great shape either. We should be thankful there are no casualties. If All Might had been even a second late, we would be counting down the days until we had to close the school." "What about the injured?" Recovery Girl, the school's nurse, provided an update. 13's back has taken quite a toll, but she will heal in a few days. We needn't worry about her. To think that portal user could turn his own black holes against him. Aizawa's situation is more serious. His left arm is crushed and his skull is damaged. He will recover, but his abilities will be reduced for the rest of his career. Some bone fragments got into his eyes and caused damage. We'll need to wait to see how much he can recover. Silence fell over the room. Being professional heroes, injuries were part of their lives. Many had scars from their battles. Aizawa was not the first, and he certainly wouldn't be the last. They all understood this reality. The only thing they could do was fight harder for the sake of their comrades. Recovery Girl continued her report. Lastly, Izuku Deku. It's a miracle he's still alive. His left arm is severely injured, the right one is nearly destroyed, and the right side of his face is damaged. Gloom filled the room, casting a shadow over the future of the young boy. It didn't matter whether he survived or not. However, there seemed to be a twist. His recovery abilities were apparently limitless as long as he was given enough rest. The nature of his quirk was fundamentally different from what had been registered. He was aware of this, which was why he had chosen to confront the villains alone. He knew he could rise again, no matter how much he was beaten. The teachers' faces brightened slightly. Perhaps there was hope for the boy after all. Half an hour earlier, in UA's infirmary, 19 students waited anxiously in the corridor. Behind the door, 2 of their teachers and their class president were receiving treatment. None of them dared to speak. At one point, one of the teachers entered, accompanied by a child. Initially, no one paid much attention to their arrival, but the presence of the child felt unsettling. What was she doing here? Their questions were soon answered. The teacher knocked on the door twice before Recovery Girl opened it. "Nomuri? Who is that?" one of the teachers asked. "A relative of the boy. She came to see him," Nomuri replied. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "Nizu gave us the green light." "Bring her in. And bring the others too. I have news." At this, the students perked up. Without making a sound, they followed their teacher and the unknown child into the room. Some of them flinched at the sight that greeted them. The green-haired teenager lay on a steel table, a simple white cloth covering him, resembling a lifeless figure. The fact that he wasn't breathing added to the somber atmosphere. Sensing the students' distress, Recovery Girl quickly reassured them. "He may look like this, but he is indeed alive. He never breathed to begin with, being a robot and all. We placed him here because we figured that a normal bed would hinder his recovery." "What do you mean?" one student asked. "I mean that despite his current state, he is indeed recovering. Even as we speak, he is reconstructing himself on a molecular level. That exceeds the definition of great vitality. As long as his memory is intact, he is essentially immortal. I take it you knew about this, young one?" For the first time since her arrival, the child spoke up. Her red eyes were glued to the ground, hidden by her long, wavy white hair, with a small horn on the right side of her forehead breaking the flow. Her timid voice filled the room. "Weiss, Daddy. Daddy already did something like that. We were walking home after school, and there was a kid on the road. A truck came, and Daddy caught him and dragged him out of the way. But Daddy got hit and he recovered from that, right?" Recovery Girl prompted. "Yes, it took him a bit of time, but after some days, he was fine again. His hand could move like normal." So you knew from the start that his quirk wasn't just super strength? Why yes. But he told me it was supposed to be our secret. At this point, the girl looked like she was about to cry. Uraraka couldn't take it anymore. She knelt down and hugged her from behind. Hey, your daddy's the strongest, okay? She said, turning the girl to face her and placing her hands on the child's shoulders. You should have seen him back there. He was so strong that the bad guys were scared of him. They didn't dare approach. Just because he's resting a bit doesn't mean he won't wake up again. You said it yourself, it takes him a bit of time, but he'll be fine again. So just wait for him a bit. Hearing those words, the child seemed to calm down. I'll be waiting. Great. He'll be happy to see you when he wakes up. Suddenly, a look of realization crossed her features, and the tears threatened to spill again. I didn't ask him why he was so happy yesterday. Uraraka embraced the girl tightly, gently caressing her long silver hair, tears rolling down her own cheeks. While the school staff held a meeting, the students of Class 1A busied themselves caring for the red-eyed child. She had calmed down somewhat, and the group moved to another room, as Recovery Girl insisted that the patients needed some peace. Uraraka held the child's hand. So what's your name? I'm Ochako Uraraka, by the way, she said. Eri Deku, the girl replied. Oh Eri, that's cute. Is it okay if we call you that? Yes. Everybody calls me Eri at school, only Daddy gets called Deku. A bright smile illuminated her features. Combined with the traces of tears from before and the long white skirt she wore, she genuinely looked like a shining ice princess. The hearts of the classmates melted instantly. An angel! She's an angel, Yaoyorozu thought, the first to recover. Eri, you keep calling him Daddy. Why is that? She asked. Eri fidgeted, her cheeks reddening. The scene elicited various reactions among the students. She looks like she is being scolded. That's too cute, one thought. What secret is she trying to hide now? Another wondered. Now I understand why he was so eager to get home. Eri? If it's uncomfortable, you can skip that question, okay? No need to pressure yourself, a student suggested. No. I'll say it, otherwise you will think we're weird. It's because I read it in a book. You read it in a book? What do you mean? Yaoyorozu asked. I read in a book that when a boy takes care of a younger girl for a long time, they are called father, and that daddy is another way to call them. So I started calling him that, but people looked at us weirdly, so he asked me to call him brother in public. But now I've done it and. Now the child began to panic, fearing she had ruined her guardian's friendships, only to be reassured immediately by another bear hug. You've done nothing wrong. You have a special bond with your father, and that's okay. There's no need to feel bad about it. Take it easy. Meanwhile, a certain mischievous student was strapped to the roof outside the room with a triple layer of tape. Once the teens felt that the child had calmed down, they proceeded with their introductions. After the introductions were complete, the group began discussing everything and nothing, learning more about the little girl. 30 peaceful minutes passed, the previous tension dissipating into nothingness. Finally, midnight returned. She greeted the group and asked if they had enjoyed their time. Eri, shy and adorable, hesitated before glancing at the older girls for permission. Yaoyorozu encouraged her to go, stating it was important. Uraraka chimed in, assuring Eri they would meet again. With a timid nod, Eri followed Midnight, leaving the older girls wondering if there was more they could do. Back at the meeting, the principal explained the situation regarding an android with advanced technology. His abilities were vast, including self-repair and the capacity to improve based on experiences. The principal emphasized that defeating him would only make him stronger, and they needed to wait for him to recover. The rodent principal expressed concern over their failure to protect the students, noting that one had been hurt. They were fortunate that this particular student could recover with rest, but the implications of their failure weighed heavily on them. The discussion shifted to how they would care for Eri while Izuku was recuperating. Snipe questioned whether her family would take care of her, only to be reminded that her only family was currently in the infirmary. The principal elaborated that Izuku had taken care of Eri since she was a child, despite being an orphan himself. He had raised her with great care, demonstrating a strong bond between them. Concerns arose about the legality of his situation, given that he was a minor. It was revealed that, on paper, Eri was legally his daughter, and he had adopted her. The principal speculated that Izuku might have manipulated the system to achieve this. The group agreed that separating them would cause more harm than good. They decided to monitor their situation until Izuku became an adult. Present Mike sighed, relieved that they were prioritizing Izuku's relationship with Eri. The meeting continued, and eventually, they concluded that one of the teachers would need to look after Eri. 4 volunteers emerged: Midnight, Snipe, Ectoplasm, and Cementos. They decided to choose the closest teacher, which turned out to be Ectoplasm, whose apartment was just across the street from Eri's home. With that major issue resolved, the meeting shifted to other topics. Hours passed, and the reunion finally ended after sunset. The teachers exited one by one, bidding farewell to the principal. Ectoplasm was asked to stay behind to discuss Eri's stay at his place. Just as they began, a student entered the room. Uraraka, visibly nervous, stammered as she approached the principal. He patiently waited for her to gather her thoughts. After taking a deep breath, she expressed her desire to care for Eri while Deku recovered. The principal maintained his smile but informed her that he could not allow it without financial support from the school. He acknowledged her family's struggles and emphasized the need for parental approval. Uraraka understood the principal's concerns. She had considered taking a part-time job to support Eri but realized she needed her parents' consent. She admitted that her parents were currently busy and trying hard to manage their situation. The principal suggested she inform them about the circumstances when possible and gauge their reaction while they continued with the original plan. And if they agree, they would transfer Eri's guard to him. Ectoplasm felt a sense of responsibility as he considered the situation. He locked his gaze with the teen standing before him, then turned back to his superior, giving his answer. It was acceptable to him. With that settled, they only needed the approval of others involved. Eri sat in the back seat of Ectoplasm's car, her legs swinging lightly in rhythm with the soft tune playing from the speakers. The pro-hero glanced at her through the small mirror, concerned by her silence. The sight reassured him. Although she wasn't smiling and was focused on her feet, she wasn't curling up or crying. The little girl seemed comfortable with the silence, concentrating on the gentle swing of her legs. He recalled the wonder that had appeared on her face when he first showed up in civilian clothes. She had observed him without contempt or pity, even after noticing his prosthetic legs. Unlike most kids her age, she didn't flinch at his unmasked face. Instead, she regarded him with wide, curious red eyes, taking in every detail. He appreciated her curiosity, as it reminded him of his own son at that age, eager to learn about the world. It also indicated that her guardian was doing a good job, which was a positive sign. As they drove, a comfortable silence enveloped them. A quarter of an hour later, they arrived at the designated parking lot. Ectoplasm exited the car and helped Eri out. After smoothing out the wrinkles in her dress, she hesitantly accepted his large, thin hand. He guided her toward her new apartment. Upon entering, Eri headed straight for her closet. She quickly gathered her clothes and belongings under Ectoplasm's watchful yet content gaze. He noted how fast she was, much quicker than his son, which was impressive given his quirk. She seemed diligent. Once she finished packing, she handed her suitcase to him, and his clone began moving it toward his home. They double-checked to ensure she hadn't forgotten anything before setting off. The physical distance was short, as Ectoplasm lived just across the street. However, Eri felt an intense pressure on her shoulders, making the brief walk feel much longer. For the first time in her life, she would be living without the support and care of her guardian. While she didn't distrust the man accompanying her, it was an unfamiliar experience, and she didn't feel entirely ready. Yet, she knew Izuku would feel bad if she broke down, so she steeled herself for the challenge ahead, determined not to let him down. As they climbed the stairs, her small hand remained in Ectoplasm's much larger one. Upon reaching his floor, he paused in front of a door, studying her for a moment before pushing the handle and opening it. A short corridor bathed in warm light revealed itself. Eri noticed a few decorations hanging on the walls, with a closed door on the left. A few meters later, the corridor opened into a large room filled with sunlight. Eri spotted two figures, one lounging comfortably on a simple couch, the other sitting in a chair, elbow resting on a round table and fiddling with various objects. Ectoplasm gently nudged her forward with a few encouraging words. As she stepped into the room, the attention of both individuals turned toward her. The person on the couch merely turned their head in her direction, taking in her presence without haste. The other stood up and walked calmly toward her. Upon reaching her, they crouched down, resting their left knee on the carpet, and a gentle smile spread across their lips. They extended their right hand toward the girl and spoke in a warm, calm voice, introducing themselves.